third-party outsource HR, and I'd like to speak against that. In my experience working in other cities, outsourcing often costs more money and reduces quality service. Also, the current HR director we have, Tammy, has been the most fair, professional, and honest person we've worked with, at least as a president. Also, disputes have been more easily resolved with Tammy in the HR position, and a good relation between the union and HR has helped a lot recently, so I'd like to speak against that. Also, one thing I don't know if people are aware, she insisted that her pay range be lowered under the study. The study recommended a range 10, and she has to be moved to a range 9. I don't believe in the past the HR position has been given the full attention it deserves, and Tammy, in my opinion, in my experience working with her, has worked hard to live up to the demands of that position. She's done a good job. Anyway, again, I'm just asking the council not to consider outsourcing HR at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Madam Clerk.
Next is, Michelle Oliver, and this is to be read. I would like to address the misconception that outsourcing the HR position will save the city of Seward money. It will actually cost the city and the Seward community as a whole much more than the cost of wages and benefits, etc. The cost of outsourcing HR is $20 to $200 per employee per month, or 2 to 10% of the monthly employee salary for every employee the city has, depending on which method is used. The city would need to make sure that every contingency has been considered when making up a contract, as if it is not, there will most likely be additional fees. If you think the city of Seward will be on the low end of this scale, you would be sadly mistaken. This is just the initial cost of outsourcing. Then there is the effect on the community as a whole. Consider this, as proven by this former shipyard owner, not once but twice here in this very community. A dollar earned and spent in this community is circulated an average of 6 to 15 times. How do I know this? I worked for Seward Ship's Dry Dock and was part of the experiment both times. First in the early 90s and then again 10 years later. Wages were paid in $2 bills, and we were told to pay our normal bills with them. I paid rent, utilities, groceries, fuel bills, gas, etc. Those $2 bills were circulated in the community for months. You saw them everywhere, in the restaurants, local shops, hardware stores, literally everywhere. The money you are considering outsourcing not only will leave the community to some corporate entity, most likely out of state, but now will not benefit the community in any way, as not $1 of that money will be spent anywhere in the local community. Those dollars are lost to the community of Seward. How many of our local businesses can stand to lose one more source of revenue? We need to keep our jobs local, not outsourced. Please think about your constituents before you act.
Thank you.
And then we have two more online, and the first one is Linda Paquette.
Go ahead, Linda.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So this really is more a comment from the work session. I wanted to thank administration. I was really impressed with the work that they did with the draft RFP. It was heartening to see what felt like cooperation coming from admin on this, because I know there's been a lot of resistance in the past. So that was one comment I had. I just wonder, I know that the audit is going to be looking at paperwork, but I wonder if there's a mechanism where customers who know that they have a problem, who maybe have even brought it forward in the past and been dismissed, if there's some mechanism during this audit process for those people to submit their request for review, and maybe, maybe they would be able to say, well, listen, you need to look at all this and not necessarily just those few months. I don't know. I feel like you're getting on to dealing with the problem, but I don't know that you're going to get all the way through it if you don't have some mechanism for the customers to come through and submit or raise their hands. About HR, I have heard several people say the position has not served us for years. And if that's the problem, maybe the better way to go about, rather than outsourcing, because that seems like it isn't going to be affordable, would be to redefine it. Maybe you need to go back and do a review of the position and the requirements and the, what that position is doing, and then open it up for reapplication or something. It's just a thought of a way to deal with moving forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, you said there was at least one more?
There was, and now the hand is down, so that is it.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and consent agenda, and I'm looking for a motion and a second.
I move for the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda.
I second it.
Thank you. Right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and strike the executive session. We were able to take care of determining those items at our work session earlier this week. So without objection, I'm just going to take that off the meeting. Are there any other changes? I'll go to Councilmember Cease. Did you have any comments on the agenda or the consent agenda?
No, I didn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Casagrande?
I'd like to remove Resolution 2021-018 from the consent agenda.
Thank you. And I'll look to the room. Are there any changes or amendments? Madam Clerk, could you call for the vote, please?
Voting on tonight's agenda and consent agenda. Bosenga?
Yes.
Cease?
Councilmember?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Vaughn?
Yes.
Casagrande?
Yes.
Demas?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
Mayor Terry?
Yes.
Your agenda and consent agenda are approved and approved on tonight's consent agenda. Resolution 2021-017 approving the City of Seward's 2020 multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. The January 25th, 2021 City Council regular meeting minutes. You have appointed Jim Pemberton to the Historic Preservation Commission with a term to expire in May 2022.
Thank you. Next is proclamations and awards. There are none. Borough Assembly report. Next is City Manager's report, and that starts on page 4 of the packet, and I'll turn it over to administration.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. POs that were issued here between the last meeting is $5,400 for electric for some 69 kV fuses, and then the yearly Parks and Rec Boys and Girls Club contract from Resolution 2020-004 for $170,000, and then for electric pump and maintenance supplies for $6,400, and once again electric for 69 amp 5-speed power fuse units. That's at $5,060. And electric again for a Boss plow and plow box for $9,350. And I just want to reiterate about the 3rd Avenue street closing. I know you're all going to say something, so I'll say it first. That 3rd Avenue is going to be closed early morning, so if your vehicle's there tonight, you need to get it moved. Take any questions.
Great, thank you. So I'll go to the phone first. Councilmember Cease, do you have any questions for administration?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Casagrande?
I first want to apologize if this question has already been answered, but is there a reason why we can't see the vendor names on the purchases between $5,000 and $30,000?
Do you want to reiterate that?
I'm trying to remember the reason was, I think it was...
Sam able to,
Basically fraud prevention.
can you,
Yeah,
Fraud
fraud prevention. Because someone can make up a fake invoice if they know the exact amount, vendor, and supplies that we ordered, and then send it to us. So that was just a quick, easy way to prevent that. Was just take off the vendor name, and I round to somewhat near dollars, so it's not exact as well. Just as an added protection.
And Madam Mayor, if they want to know the vendor's name, the the council member can reach out to us so we can get that vendor name. Should be no problem that way.
Okay.
We're just trying to keep it out of the,
I think that came up as an audit.
That was actually our banking representative.
Oh, banking,
that,
that's it.
Yeah, that suggested that.
Councilmember Casagrande, were you able to hear that?
Yes, thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. So I'll look to the room if there's any questions. Very thorough report today. Thank you for that. Next on the agenda is the city attorney's report. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I put a report in the packet and took a little bit different approach to this month's report because I wanted to give both the council and the members of the public a better sense of the actual cost to the community of the legal services, and a good time frame to bracket that kind of question is the calendar year, because that's your budget year. It's also kind of good because as opposed to a month-to-month snapshot where you might be halfway through some project or issue that you're working with, by now we've been providing some legal advice and working on legal issues long enough to be able to say, hey, you know, this project is done and this is how much it cost. So that was kind of the tenor of this report. It's going to be a little bit lagging because it's just hard to do this type of cost thing up to the minute. So this is through the end of December. It doesn't include the month of January. So the numbers, and as I speak, I'm just going to give round numbers, probably not precisely to the dollar, although some of these things are fairly precise. It's $57,250 that's been spent on legal services over the 5 months that our firm has been serving as your city attorney. And the report breaks it down into fairly general categories and one pretty specific category. We separately count and track COVID-19 related legal work, primarily because at least we hope that there'll be outside general fund revenues available to pay for those costs. And so the various things that we did, including an MOA with the railroad, some CARES Act qualification type questions, can we spend CARES Act money on this, that, or the other thing, and keeping up with what's going on with the emergency ordinances that we kind of stepped into and were behind the curve at the beginning, and some question about the mask ordinance and how you might enforce it, and there were a couple other, just updating the ordinance, that type of thing, all fell under COVID-19. Spent a little bit under $5,000 or about $1,000 a month on that. The biggest item by far was the lawsuit with the Friends of Jesse Lee Holmes. In fact, out of the $57,250, that's almost 50% of your legal costs were in that one case, which is now behind us. So the good news is that won't be an ongoing expense. Some minor utility items, we do track that because your utilities are what are known as enterprise funds. It's important that they be able to independently account for their legal costs in figuring out whether the revenues are matching the expenses of providing you your utilities. These were pretty minor. Obviously, forensic audit might up that figure over the next 5 months, but that was less than $500 on utilities. Planning and zoning took about $4,000 worth of legal services there. There's a couple, one enforcement matter was started and concluded. There's another one that's beginning now, and which some preliminary work had been completed earlier. And then there was the telecommunication ordinance and a rezone ordinance that was all involved in that work. Personnel, an organization with this many employees, the personnel matters are going to be sort of an ongoing and recurring costs. This particular period, probably higher than what I would expect going forward, just because there was a significant grievance that we were asked to help out with and were able to help resolve it. And a few questions about negotiation process of the recently completed, I think, the wage study and some contract amendments that came out of that. And I'm pretty sure those are all completed, right? That whole process is done now, so. The Port and Harbor matters that we worked on mostly had to do with leases. There's an awful lot of leases, and whether it's correct to put them into this category or not, I'm not 100% sure, but that's where they end up. That's where we end up tracking them. And we're gonna have some continuing work in that area, just because leases get renewed or they get assigned, or there's going to be a new tenant, I think, with the Coast Guard. Hopefully we'll be getting that lease together and things like that. That took about $1,100 were spent on that over the last 5 months. Records requests, I've started keeping track of records requests about 8 years ago for all the municipal clients, primarily because these things can go in cycles depending on a community, and sometimes people get an awful lot of them all at once, and so the council is interested in, hey, how much is all this costing us for the lawyers to deal with records requests? It's a very important part of open government, I think. So it's not like I'm putting it in here to say, oh my God, these people are people shouldn't ask for things because it costs money. I mean, I think it's a very legitimate thing for people to ask for records, but I was asked to many years ago, hey, can you keep track of it? So that's what we do. It was less than $1,000 over the last 5 months for Seward. And then, of course, you can't itemize every little thing you do and attach a cost to it. We have a category in all of our bills. It's called General Counsel, and it includes just a wide variety of items that come up from time to time. We've worked on the ethics code, or a little bit on the Little League contract. There was that issue about the counting of the absentee ballots in the election. Legal opinion about the intersection of council authority and manager authority in hiring executive level employees. You get some Open Meetings Act questions. These are going to come up from time to time, and some conflict of interest type issues that you can expect that those will come up periodically throughout a year. And so over the last 5 months, that totaled more than 10,000, less than 11,000. So running about $2,000 a month in that general category for legal services. So I think the big picture for you is you're out of budget. I have no idea what you spent, the first 7 months, but I knew what your budget was, and it was, under 100,000. So obviously, to some extent, you're out of budget for this year. I have no idea how much, and I'm sensitive to that. But that's all I can say. I mean, not every legal cost can be avoided, and we can talk further about that. There's a review of the attorney coming up next month, and I'd be happy to talk about ideas of whether costs are too high or whether there's ways to reduce them. But that's the report for this month, and I'll be happy to take questions.
Great, thank you. First, I'll look to the room. Are there any questions? I'll check with Councilmember Cease. Do you have any questions for the city attorney?
No, I don't, thank you.
Councilmember Casagrande?
My connection's a little bad, but I think I heard that there's higher costs than normal in a couple departments. And I'm just wondering, I know the reasons were explained, but for certain items. But for example, the one that I did hear was personnel. What would be, why would Seward's costs be higher than most other communities? Do we have more employees than normal?
Actually, I was not comparing Seward to any other communities. My point on the personnel costs as reported in this report is that I would not expect them to be this high on a continuing basis, because there was a fairly significant employee grievance that I was involved with and asked to help out on. and which, you know, I can't talk about the details of it, so. But I, you know, obviously, but I can tell you that that it is not something I would expect to keep coming up. You know, I wouldn't expect the city to have significant grievances every 5 months. Now, whether that's, and that's just based on my experience in other communities. I mean, I have no idea what the past history of Seward is with employee grievances.
Thank you. Does that
Yep.
answer your question, Councilmember Casagrande?
Absolutely, thank you. I'm sorry, the connection was coming in and out, so I didn't quite pick up that, but that is clarified, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. All right, seeing no other questions, thank you very much for that very thorough report. That was actually helpful to me, so I appreciate the explanation behind that.
Sure.
Next is the Interconnect Implementation Plan Quarterly Report by Rob Montgomery.
Hello.
Page 22 of your packet.
Okay. I appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk about our interconnection program. Got a lot of work to do, but I think we've got some good things going on. I'm going to start out with good news, and some of you probably are aware of this already. Back in October, we installed our first bidirectional meter with a customer here. That gives us 3 total customers now that are interconnected to our system. Since October, we've switched out the other 2 customers as well. So we have 3 customers actually using the net meter. Now, I'm hoping that within the next few weeks, we'll find out that we're going to bring on another customer. We had a company out of Anchorage contact us. They're working with someone here in Seward who is looking to install solar. They have spoken with our acting field engineer, Rob Larson. He has provided them feedback, and he's also provided them with their next steps to come back and make it happen. So as of right now, we're simply waiting to hear back from them. So where does that leave us with our interconnection program today? If we have somebody that comes to us and they want to interconnect to our system, we can make it happen. We can work with them through the logistical details and get there. But our process itself still needs to be streamlined a great deal and refined in many ways. So how are we going to do that? We're going to look at other utilities for their best practices. We're going to, we need to identify someone in our department who can be the project lead. Right now with our current vacancies, that makes that a challenge. But hopefully when we get those positions filled, we can move in that direction. We need to create more consistency, not only in the application process, but with our internal checklist and how we're working with customers and with installers. We also need to assess our net metering, current net metering rate. We need to look at the other utilities in Alaska to see how our rate compares so that we can adjust it as necessary. And then lastly, we really need to work on our process time. I couldn't tell you today when somebody comes to us how long it takes from the time we get the application through the completion of the project. And that's something that we actually should be able to tell them. So once we get these things done, then I think what we can do is we can go from a process to what I call a full program. And the full program is where we can actually start communicating and promoting what we're doing. Today we have very limited information out in the public space, but if we can take it to that next level, we'll be able to expand information on our website. We'll be able to use social media to provide program updates. We can use bill stuffers to put in information about the program and promote the use of renewable energy. We can send out news releases as we reach milestones. And probably more importantly, where we're really lacking today is we need to develop some training and educational materials, not just for installers, but for the public as well. And then we want to get to a point where we're partnering with businesses and industry experts on interconnection and renewable energy sources so that we can have educational seminars in the community. We can do vendor fairs and that sort of thing. So really, to summarize where we are and what I would like to see us be able to do over the next 6 to 8 months is we need to streamline and formalize our processes, and both internally and externally. And then we also need to take our interconnection efforts from what I call just a process to a full program where we're communicating and we're marketing to the community. I believe the timeline's realistic, but we are facing challenges because of the vacancies that we have in our department. One thing I do want to mention is that I've been in touch with Solarize the Kenai. It is an awareness campaign. This is their second year of operating. In 2020, they actually installed solar panels on 82 homes for 485 kilowatt hours of power. This year, they're hoping to increase those numbers, of course, but they've actually targeted Seward for their campaign. And they've got a person assigned to the Seward area. And the feedback I got today is they've got at least 20 people that are showing interest in putting solar on their homes. So I will continue to work with that organization, and they're going to keep me apprised as we get more and more interest.
Very good, sir. Thank you.
Any questions?
That's what I'll check for. Councilmember Cease, do you have any questions?
No, I don't, thank you.
Councilmember Casagrande, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Great report. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Demas, did you have a question?
I just have one quick question. When you said getting to the full program, did you say that was going to be about 4 to 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, if things go, if I can get the operations person where we have somebody leading the program done, the communications part of it, I think, I can be working on along the way. We may not have everything done that we want to have the full program, but I think we're going to have most of it done. I have already started updating information on our website, not necessarily with the interconnection, but I have started working on materials for the interconnection. So hopefully we can put that information out on the website in the very near future. If we can get to the point where we can, I really want to get a social media platform for the electric department. If we can do that, then we can promote our interconnection program, but we can also help educate people about renewable energy sources. I think that's part of a program, is putting information out to the public so they can make, good decisions. Yeah, I think we can.
I think that's really exciting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, excellent. Are there any other questions or comments? Again, very thorough report. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Next on the agenda is Planning and Zoning Commission Quarterly Report by Chair Cindy Eklund.
Madam Mayor, it appears that we do not have a planning and zoning representative.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is Port and Commerce Advisory Board Annual Report by Laura Schneider.
Laura Schneider is on the line.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Chair Snyder, we can hear you. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. I appreciate your time tonight. I am going to keep this quick. I know that it hasn't been too long since I submitted my last written report, and I just wanted to touch on the items that in that report I said we still had left on our 2020 priorities list. So we evaluated again the viability of a heat pump rebate program, and our board is really excited about seeing that move forward. And I would just like to note, I'm really happy to follow Mr. Montgomery. He had a chance to speak to our board at our last meeting, and we're really excited to have him as a partner in moving a lot of these things forward. I think we have a lot of really good momentum for the interconnect policy and for looking at some of these ideas to both help the utility and to help Seward residents. So we're looking forward to fleshing that idea out a little bit more. And we know that there's some other priorities in the electric utility right now, but PACAB will definitely be helping to keep that heat pump rebate program at top of mind and working out some of the details behind the scenes so that we can bring that forward as something for the community. we were able to have 3 of our members remotely attend the AML conference this year, and I'd like to thank the clerk's office for arranging that and for making that so seamless. I was able to attend a few of the sessions, and I know a couple of the other members were as well, so that was great and always really appreciated it. We updated the SMIC development plan, and we had really good input from JAG and from some other stakeholders on things that they'd like to see, and so I think we have some good momentum. This is our last year. 2021, we're going to update the plan, or review the plan again, and then in 2022, it's actually up for an update. And a lot has changed in the last 5 years. So I think that there's going to be some big changes and some more looking forward to the next stages at SMIC. One of the things that you'll see on our 2021 priorities is that we added a line item where we'd also like to track some of the projects that are in progress and make sure that those things are moving forward. We always talk about the review at the end of the year, but I feel like in the review, there's always a few things that we notice that we want to see move forward, and so we've put time in our agendas this year to actually talk about some of those specific projects and how we can get some momentum to make those things happen. Another highlight from the last quarter of the year was that we've been talking about an energy fair for a couple years, and it got derailed by COVID and our inability to meet, but that was actually an opportunity to kind of rethink what the energy fair could be. In the past, there has not been great participation, and that's kind of why it fizzled out and ended. So what our energy subcommittee, our ad hoc energy committee, continued to meet together virtually throughout COVID and did amazing work, and I'm so grateful for what they put into this. But they put together some ideas for energy education versus an energy fair, so things that could be available online to everyone, things that could be recorded for people to look at later, because we were talking about what our priorities are, and really the goal is for the community to feel more empowered and to feel like they have some ways that they can help with their energy bill, that they know about what their options are as far as the interconnect goes and other alternative energy sources. And if that's the goal, we want to make sure that we're able to put that out in an equitable way where everyone is able to participate no matter what their schedule is, no matter what kind of equipment they have at home for attending Zoom meetings. So that's another thing that we're going to be working on going into this year. And then the one item on our list that we didn't get to this year that we've moved to our 2021 priorities is evaluating city infrastructure for future growth. And I know that with the rate study having just come out, and we're going out for an electric rate study, a lot of that stuff is happening already. And we think that's great. As a board, we identified that as a priority last year of wanting to make sure that that we're looking forward and that we're saving and anticipating the growth that we're going to have as a community. And so this year we wanted to specifically look at the growth opportunities, and as we add more neighborhoods and as as we put more stress on our system, what are some of the opportunities for growth and change, and how can we make sure that the system stays robust and reliable for everyone? So I know I teased a few things from our 2021 priorities, but I'm not going to get too much into that because I know we're going to have a work session here soon to talk specifically about that. But we did have a really good 2020 and a very productive year, despite the fact that we missed a few of our meetings. We have a full board, and the last 3 meetings we've had full meetings with everyone there. It's been wonderful, and I really look forward to getting to share with you what we have coming in 2021 at that work session in March. But if you have any questions for me, I am very happy to answer them.
Councilmember Casagrande, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you. Great report.
Councilmember Cease?
No, I don't, and thanks, Laura, for the report.
I'll just look around. It doesn't look like there's any questions or comments, but it's a very thorough report, and we look forward to seeing you and your board soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Snyder. Next on the agenda is CARES Act funding and disbursement report by Sam Hickok, and There is a laydown which has been distributed to both the council and the public, and I'll turn it over to you, Sam.
Thank you. So this is just a very high level, very simplified summary report of all the revenues that we got from the state, or from the borough and the state, which was passed through the Fed. So in total, which ironically I forgot to put on here, $6.825 million was the total that we received between the feds and the borough. So on the first page, the federal award was $5.33 million. And then I just put in a pie chart kind of how that was spread out. Just between your grant distribution and your utility credit was 66% of that amount. So 2/3 of the money that we got from the feds went out to the community via the grants for nonprofits and for businesses, as well as the utility credit for residents. The other big chunk was our payroll, which you guys approved was $1.25 million to cover first responders and incident management team. So that was 24%, a quarter of that. And then it gets smaller from there. Capital equipment, which was your air packs mainly. Legal fees, like he pointed out, they broke it down for us exactly what COVID-19 entailed in terms of legal fees, so we were able to code that to the grant. Same thing with audit. The BDO team had broken down what COVID-related costs they had. That was very small, $19,000 there at the bottom, which was less than 1%. So that's just a breakdown of how it was spent. If you have specific questions on line items or what we bought, just kind of high level supplies would be like mitigation supplies, hand sanitizer, wipes, that kind of stuff. A lot of supplies were on the MIS side with like Zoom, laptops, remote work, communication, that all adds up pretty quickly. He was in my office a lot for a few weeks working on that. And then contracted services, that $36,000. So 30 of that was us paying the SBCA for them to actually do our grant processing. And then on the borough side, that was $1.495 million, and that was completely distributed for nonprofits in the area, and I went ahead and just listed those. And so we had the original distribution, and then when we have that 1.4-ish million left, you gave another $336,000 out, and so the same group got an additional check. And then kind of a total of all your pass-through payments. So just in grant funds, we wrote checks for $4.6 million, and that was 56% businesses and 44% nonprofits. And then I just attached our AccuFund reports showing those two funds. We broke them out between borough funding and Fed funding. And then you can see for accounting purposes, revenue equals expenses. And again, if you have specific questions on these line items, what consisted of them, I'm happy to answer those, follow up with an email, etc. But if you have any questions now, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, well, I'll shake it up and I'll look around the room and see if there's any questions in the room.
I have questions, but I'll email you later. But I'll go through.
Thank you.
And then I'll check, Councilmember Cease, did you have any questions?
I haven't looked over it very well yet, but I will, and if I have any questions, I'll contact you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Casagrande? Do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Great, thank you. Great, very helpful, thank you. Next on the agenda is a presentation of the audit results from payroll, PERS, contributions, credit cards from Mladen, from Clear Idea Accounting and Consulting. Page 23, were they actually going to join us, or are we just looking at, oh, right, okay.
They are online.
Hi, good evening. Yes, Mladen is here with Clear Idea.
Yes.
So, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to hopefully be of service to the council And maybe just a quick brief introduction. I think the first time that I've actually worked with the city was back in 2010, 2011, when I was one of the auditors with, at the time, Cottrell and Company. And just about a year ago, I spoke to the administration that, at the time, finance director was departing, and they just kind of wanted to see, if I would be available, just kind of on a temporary basis to help out if anything comes up, just to see if I have any availability. At the time, we were going through the audit as well. So if there's anything I could help with. So we've been kind of on and off working together for about a year now. And just about a month and a half ago, there was a request to do the inspection of the payroll, retirement, healthcare benefits. So we've done that, and I have a report for you that actually fit on one page, but really behind this report are hundreds and hundreds of Excel spreadsheets and a lot of testing and a lot of documents that we've gone through in great details. But I'll just jump right into it and then kind of talk through what we've done and what are the final results. So the first half of this page speaks about what we've done, what were we requested to do, and then what actually is an inspection. So inspection involves performing calculations on a test basis to ensure whether accounting for specific transactions were performed in an appropriate manner, comply with the city's policies and other applicable regulations. And then we also speak about what is the purpose of inspection, and that actually inspection is not an audit, so we don't really issue an opinion on financial statements or any groups of transactions. And then an inspection is also not a forensic audit, so it's not geared towards uncovering any fraud and shall not be used in that manner. So we just kind of wanted to point out that. But what the point of the inspection is that if we do come, if any inaccuracies or any inadequate accounting for certain transactions come to our attention, we would point it out here in the report. So then midway through that page, we speak a little bit about the procedures that we use to conduct the inspection. So what is it all involved? And then I'll drop down to the bottom where it says inspection attributes tested. So all that means is what we actually did. So in regards to healthcare eligibility for employees, we recalculated eligibility for all employees based upon 1 month to 3 month look-back measurement methods as specified by ACA. And when we started to look at your healthcare program document, and really just had this broad definition that anyone actively working over 30 hours per week is eligible for the benefits. But then when you look at it, what does that mean, 30 hours actively per week? Which week? Is it on average per week per month or year, or 2 months, 3 months? And what does it mean actively working? So when we reached out to your program administrator, Premier, I believe, they pointed us in the ACA, so Affordable Care Act direction. And there we were able to find some of those methods and ways to actually do the inspection. So 1 month to 3 month look-back measurement method is what we used. So I'll jump, regarding that line item, I'll jump to results of the inspection regarding one, so healthcare eligibility inspection. So initially, because when you do this type of testing, you're blind to all the different exceptions to the rule, and you just kind of do black and white, whether someone meets the eligibility requirement or not. So initially, what we found was about 24 discrepancies. And then what you do, you go into those case-by-case level. And, folks there in administration, Becky and Sam, were very helpful with this. So we went into all those cases, and what we found out that 4 of those were actually FMLA related. So those cases were cleared. 13 of them were because an individual was new hire. So when someone starts, for example, today, maybe in February, they won't have on average 30 hours of active work a week, so maybe they wouldn't be necessarily eligible in March for the benefits. But as a new hire, you are, full-time hire, you are eligible for those benefits. So 13 of those discrepancies were cleared that way. Then 3 of them were cases where individual moved from part-time to full-time. And then there were just a handful or just a couple of them that were very specific, where an individual was actually serving as National Guard for a period of time or was in military duty. So those are all kind of exceptions that at the end of the day cleared these discrepancies. And then really the final test result for that piece of the report was that there were no exceptions under the healthcare eligibility piece of that. So the second thing that we worked on was PERS retirement matching contributions. In general, there's two things going on here for defined benefit retirement PERS portion. City is required to match around 22% of the gross wages for any employee that's eligible, and then on defined contribution, city is required to match 5% of gross wages. So, and as you can see then dropping down to results of that item, PERS retirement match contribution, we noted no exceptions. We both look at our general ledger and how much was matching per our payroll registered per each employee. And then we also noted, we were also paying attention to what was actually reporting of what hit PERS, PERS fund. So we were looking at those state documents as well and comparing the two, and we didn't notice any issues, any pervasive issues on that side as well. So without any more or further ado, I'll just kind of stop there and open it up to any questions.
So I just have a couple questions. So specifically, there were only 2 things you were inspecting. It was the healthcare eligibility inspection and the PERS retirement matching contributions. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Buckline?
So that being said, the credit cards were not audited.
So you, those were the only 2 things. So you didn't, so even though you pulled payroll registers, healthcare benefit eligibility rules, there was no credit card, that you didn't audit any credit cards?
No, when we were talking about what really focused on inspection should be, these were the items that we kind of defined to be the items to be tested, and credit cards. I just can't recall credit cards ever being mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor?
Can you define we?
I'm sorry?
Could you define we? Who, when you decided who?
Between Clear Idea and administration, when we spoke about what the purpose of the inspection, there was no mention about credit cards, to the best of what I can recall.
Thank you. I might ask just one more follow-up, and then I'll go to the phones. What was your testing batch with the 20? Were you doing 100% testing for those 2 items, or what were you looking at?
Yeah, so we were initially, usually these are done on a sampling basis because, your sample is representative population, but we really wanted to drill down to, the great details. So we pretty much covered 100% of population in both tests.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Cease, did you have any questions?
The only thing is I would like the Vice Mayor to give us more on that, if they were asked to do the credit cards or not, and it was just through the administration but didn't get over to the company to do it.
I think it was going off the break. Go ahead.
So the question came up about credit cards, and I explained that the credit cards, that the city manager reviews them twice, once electronically, and then they come back to him in paper form, and it gets checked again. And from what I remember, that was enough that they were being checked. They like the department heads weren't just submitting a credit card and there was no checks behind it. City manager checks them twice. So I think that's where I remember. I don't remember having us to do credit card. Could be wrong, but I don't remember it, sorry. Because I answered that question about the credit cards at the time. That it was,
Vice Mayor.
I just want to know, I guess through the clerk, if this can be amended to strike and credit cards from this presentation.
I was gonna just add a note after it.
Okay,
The credit cards are not audited.
thank you.
Oh, yeah, I don't know who supplied the presentation title, but it had "and credit cards" in there. Okay, Councilmember Councilmember Casagrande, did you have any questions?
I do. If I could ask the audit or the CPA that's with us, Mladen, to please expand a little bit. You mentioned something about you found 26, I don't know, 26 transactions that needed to be further looked into, and then you separated them out. But you did mention something about once you look deeper with the Affordable Cares Act. So does that mean that you look to Affordable Cares Act to override what our code said? Could you just expand a little bit more on why you mentioned Affordable Care Act?
Yeah, so actually it's in reverse. We spoke to the administrator as far as the actual eligibility and all of the exceptions and so forth, and how we should go about testing and what does that mean, 30 hours of active work per week. Are we looking at an average per month or year or every single week? And then at the end of the day, we found some of those that we were pointing to ACA. But in general, the way we look at it is you do 1 month look back and 3 month look back. What that means is, for example, if today we're in February and and then we're hitting March, and we should look back in February and see employees working under 30 hours per week on average in February would be losing their eligibility. So would not be covered going forward in March and so on until they go back to that 30 hours a week. So when we did that testing, so just kind of black and white, whether someone is working on average 30 hours a week, more or less, initially about 24 discrepancies came up where an individual that would be working, say, less than 30 hours a week in February would still end up being covered in March. So then we pull those out and we look at those individual cases and why wasn't, and were there any parts of the code that would cover those individuals in those cases. So like I said, 4 of them end up being FMLA, which is okay. So when we run our reports from the payroll register, they appear as leave without pay, but when we look into it, so they don't have those active, more than 30 hours per week of active work, but when we actually look at what happened there, we noted that this individual was actually an FMLA, so that that's an exception to the rule, and that would still remain covered for the benefits. So that is and then we went on and went through all 24 of those and were able to clear it because all of them again are covered in the code as exceptions to that general rule of 1 month or 3 month look back.
Do you have a follow-up, Councilmember Casagrande, or does that answer your question?
I do. So does that mean that somebody on FMLA can be on FMLA and still be working? Because what I heard you say is somebody that's working less than 30 hours a week, so they're working, but they're on FMLA, so they qualify. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, so someone came up as discrepancy because they were not active. So it was also one of these things where our payroll register at the first level that we were testing had only leave without pay. So leave without pay, and if you have 80 hours for every pay period, you end up at the end of the month with about 160 hours of leave without pay, meaning you should not be receiving any benefits. You're on leave without pay. You're just not actively working. But as it turns out, when we look closer into those individual fractions on FMLA, and we found in the code that in those cases, people should still be eligible for the benefits and covered by the benefits, by the city's benefits.
Thank you.
I have a question. I don't know if it's within the scope of this report, but we were provided information from administration that they're working with you on account reconciliation, reviewing payroll, and year-end accounting and journal entries for audit. Are those things happening with you now, or?
Yes, I do believe that we were hoping to actually have a meeting this week and discuss the level of my involvement regarding the audit, because that is something that's coming up here quickly. But again, like I was saying initially, from about a year ago when I was first engaged, conversation was around, hey, we want you to be, we wonder if you're going to be available here and there on a temporary basis to help out, as we kind of reach out to you and ask you to give us that additional, just the bandwidth to be able to push through things, in the absence of a full-time finance director.
Okay, thank you. Great, well, thank you very much for taking time with us tonight, and thank you for expanding on your written report that you provided. Have a good night, sir.
Definitely, thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is public hearings. Turn my paper over. Ordinance 21002. Madam Clerk, if you could read that title into the minutes, please.
Ordinance 2021-002 is amending portion of Seward City Code, Chapter 3 Personnel, to adjust the pay scale cap and annual leave accrual rate as a result of the classification and compensation study conducted by GovHR USA LLC. This ordinance was introduced on January 25th, 2021, and is coming tonight for public hearing and enactment.
And I'm looking for a motion and a second.
I move for the approval of ordinance 2021-002.
I'll second.
Thank you, and I'll turn it over to administration. Do you have any comments?
So Madam Mayor, part of this was, I know the attorney had touched on it, but part of this was the personnel cost that he had, just want to throw that out there for the compensation study that he was helping us work on. But we negotiated this with the SPEA, and it was back and forth, and then we come to this conclusion, and then we're bringing it before you for approval.
Great, so with that, I will open up the public hearing portion. Madam Clerk?
Madam Mayor, we have, it looks like maybe 3 people. The first one is, we're going to call Patrick Messmer.
Hello.
Patrick, you are with council and you have 5 minutes for your public hearing testimony.
Okay, can you all hear me?
We can, sir.
Okay. This is Patrick Messer, the SPA president, or Seward Public Employees Association. I am here obviously to support the implementation of the leave portion of the wage study. Part of the reason this is important is when the wage study was implemented to keep costs low, most employees did not actually get a raise at the time. So only the people that were drastically underpaid under the 50 percentile got an initial raise. I'll give you an example. We have like a 15-year employee working in the city shop who gets only a few $100s more than a new hire because he has been there long enough to be high enough in the scale to be over the 50% starting point. The wage study gives employees more room to grow, which is great. But the leave portion basically is a way to reward employees who stayed there, who have shown loyalty and stayed there 10 or 15 years to get more leave. I'm asking council to please pass this again. This was actually a reduction in cost because it costs less money to give leave out than raises, and it'll mean a lot to the employees who dedicated their lives to the city of Seward for the last 10 to 15 years. Again, I'm asking you guys to please support this and pass this. It'll mean a lot to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next.
Next, we have comments from Michelle Oliver. please pass ordinance 2021-002 and show the employees they have been working so diligently for the city for many years that you appreciate their efforts. At your last council meeting, you were kind enough to show the employees that you cared enough to bring the starting wages to a more livable standard. I now ask that you acknowledge the tenured employees by passing the increase in annual leave for those employees who have worked for the city for more than 10 years. The adjustment will allow for 2 additional benchmarks, 10 to 14 years and 15 years and above. A great cost-effective incentive to keep and acknowledge employees that have been trained and do their job well. And then, Madam Mayor, we have a hand raised, that is Karen Corrigan.
Karen, go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, Council. Just checking to make sure you can hear me okay.
We can. Thanks for checking.
Okay. Karen Corrigan. I live inside city limits. I am in favor of ordinance 2021-002 with an exception, and I'll point that out in a minute. I'm a little disappointed that in the packet, administration did not include any of the backup information from GovHR's study, and I wanted to read something really quickly for you. On their benefits survey and findings for vacation leave, it states, Seward is below the average at all the milestones, with the exception of less than 1 year, where it is the same as the average at 20 days. Also, most of the communities allow a vacation leave carryover, and Seward does not offer that. So GovHR also included in the appendix a table showing the comparison. And at 30 days a year for those over 6 years or greater, we were only beat out by being the lowest by Dillingham at 24. So there was a comment by someone at one point that they wanted the leave taken off of this because they didn't see the justification to allow employees to take 6 months of leave in the year, and that's not what this does. It takes us from 30 days a year for those of us over 15 like myself to 43 days a year, and that works out to be 2.5 months pay week. I don't think that's too dramatic of a benefit to those that stay longer with the city like myself. And having a child and other medical conditions myself, I have been quite taxed at trying to even keep enough leave to try and take a vacation of a week a year. So kids take time out of your leave. The exception that I had wanted to point out was on the second page of this ordinance, under 3.15.03 step increases. I would like to see struck from this paragraph, about halfway down, it mentions further step increases up to strike out of J to P, and then it states she must continue to demonstrate satisfactory service. I would like everything after that word service struck from this ordinance, because if you read further, it says you no longer, satisfactory service no longer guarantees your annual pay increase. And it specifically states that you must progressively show greater value. So if satisfactory is not good enough, we're going to say everybody has to be an A+ student. And next year, you need to be an A++ student. And then the next year beyond that, I mean, you're allowing administration to provide an excuse not to give us a pay raise because we weren't superior employees, and each consecutive year over, a 30-year career that you didn't progressively improve and become even greater. I think this really limits and can cause a bottleneck on pay raises because it states you have to progressively be greater. And I'm not sure how that can be properly analyzed and justified. Other than that, I'm in support of the ordinance. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your comments. Madam Clerk, I'll just check with you again that no one subsequently raised their hands.
Nope, no one else.
Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing. I'm gonna kick it off with one amendment. I would like to add a section 2 and move the current section 2 down to section 3. And the new section 2 will read, adjusted annual leave accrual will begin February 28, 2021. And I'm looking for a second.
I'll second.
And I'll let either the clerk or administration speak to that, but I think what wasn't included in this ordinance was just a start date. So that must jive with calculating timesheets and getting that in there. So are there any questions for administration with that amendment?
I think that, does that, I'm trying to remember the pay, if it, of the,
That starts a new pay period.
sergeant, okay, that's the question, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you just call for a vote on that?
My apologies.
Yep, thank you.
Voting on the amendment, Lacroix,
Yes.
Demas,
Yes.
Casagrande,
Yes.
Cease,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Osanga,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
Great, so now the ordinance is before us with that one amendment. I'll check on the phone. Councilmember Casagrande, do you have any questions or comments?
I actually do. I'm just curious. For example, if you have a department, say, like community development right now that is understaffed, there's only 2 people in there, and you have let's just say the director is in that 2.5-month leave qualification, how does that department survive when there's only 1 person running it for 2.5 months?
Administration, could you talk to maybe staff management?
So I don't, unless it's a serious medical condition, I haven't seen anybody take 2.5 months of leave at one time. It's usually a couple weeks leave and then they come back. And then usually, like in your case, you're using the department head. Department head usually has a number and leaves somebody in charge and has a number to be contacted if needed to be. So I know I do that at the harbor. So I don't see anybody taking that amount of leave at one time unless it's medical.
Did you have a follow-up question, Councilmember Casagrande?
So I don't really understand how it works to be a City of Seward employee. So if I was an employee and I could take 2.5 months off, are you saying that I have to go to the city manager to ask for that? Or don't I have the right just to take my leave however I want it?
So you put in a leave slip, sorry, through the mayor.
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. You put in a leave slip and when you want to go, and then it goes through your department head and then up to payroll. So.
So there's a process to get leave approved?
Correct.
Okay.
For that amount of leave, does it have to go to the city manager?
No.
No, does not.
Well, if the city manager's their supervisor.
Right.
Correct,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, department heads have to go to city manager, and then any leave without pay has to go to the city.
Yeah, any leave without pay definitely has to go before the city
Everything else is
manager.
up to the department.
Okay, so if the department head had an employee that requested the maximum of their leave, it would still go through an approval process. Councilmember Casagrande? I'll let her finish it.
That helps me, thank you. So basically, a department head has to get permission from the city manager, and any of the department head's employees just get permission from the department head.
Correct.
Thank you. Councilmember Cease, I'll come back to you. Oh, Councilmember Cease, did you have any questions or comments?
So if it goes through the, your supervisor or the city manager, why does it have to go through payroll? They don't have to have anything to say about it, though, do they?
No, but when you do your leave, they have to, so you put in the leave slip, you're going to be gone from the 10th to the 15th. So when you put in your leave, if you don't have a leave slip, you're just, you didn't get permission to take leave, I guess. That's what the slip is for, to show that you took in leave and there's certain dates that you're going to be gone.
Goes for payroll.
Okay,
for
so that's just,
processing, not for
that's the
approval.
only thing that you have.
And it's also
So-
for payroll processing.
Not approval.
So we have the acting finance director, he just clarified, so the slip that gets signed for approval then goes to payroll for processing, not subsequent approval. It's just as paperwork for that process.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks Sam, and thank you Norm. Councilmember Osenga?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is there an accrual limit?
If I remember right, I believe it's 750 hours.
We don't have that code book, but I think there is a limit.
It's
I don't know what
750
it
hours, I
is.
believe.
750.
And is it use it or lose it? How does that work?
Use it or lose it.
Once you get to the limit?
When you get to the limit, yeah, use it or lose it.
You can, the city.
But you have to take so much
allows you
leave a
to-
year.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
There's a minimum for the number of years served.
Correct,
You
so,
take-
so like the newer employees, I believe you gotta take 80 hours a year. The ones that've been here longer gotta take 120 hours of leave a year or more, depending on.
That's really interesting.
Does that answer your question? I kind of interrupted.
No, that was it. I just wondered if there was an accrual limit, because that's an awful lot of time to save
Yep.
up, and I'm just thinking if somebody leaves, you're paying that out.
Mhm.
So that's just a really super high number of hours to me. But, hey, whatever works.
It's a liability on the books, yes. Is there any other questions or comments? Madam Clerk, I think we're ready for a vote.
Voting on the enactment of ordinance 2021-002 as amended. Osenga?
Yes.
Cease?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
Casagrande?
No.
Demoss?
Yes.
Buckland?
Yes.
Mayor Terry? Yes, that ordinance has been enacted.
Next on the agenda is Resolution 2021-013, and this is an item postponed from the previous agenda. Madam Clerk, if you could read the title into the minutes.
Resolution 2021-013 is authorizing the city manager to amend the participation agreement with the state of Alaska Public Employees Retirement System to include the chief of police position in participation. This item was postponed from January 25th, 2021.
So we do not need a motion in a second. It is back on the table. And if council wants to turn to page 35, there's additional information provided in our packet that I believe was some of the questions, but I'll turn it over to administration.
Yes, Mayor and Council, the question came up as we needed numbers of what it was gonna cost. And so, Finance Director got the cost, the acting Finance Director got the cost for you, and we sent it here to you, back before you to see the numbers. I believe that's what you wanted to see.
So just to clarify, if we left this in the 401K, it would be an additional cost of $10,531, which would have an annual retirement cost of $30,000 or $4,500 over budget. So we need to change the budget for the
Correct.
additional cost.
You have to do an additional appropriation.
Okay. So I'll check with the room to see if there's questions.
No, I just had one question about the 10% on the 401K. The city's current match is 5%. Is that what they just said in the report from Lauded? Was 5%?
That was a PERS, yeah. That, not the,
Or the
not the 401K, it was a PERS liability.
PERS?
PERS,
Okay.
and this is the 401K, correct?
So what does the city currently contribute to?
I want to say 7 or 8%.
7 or 8%, and this says 10%.
Right.
Okay, so this is probably not correct. Because 7 or 8% is what you would.
For PERS,
You're
yes.
con-
If you were
you're-
doing the 401K, that was the 10%. PERS is a 7 or 8.
Yes, so what I'm saying is, why would you give one person more?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Correct. So if you don't put this position back into PERS, and you go back to what was done with the previous police chief, you would be giving that position more than everybody else, based on past practice, because that position with the 401K was 10%.
So the employees that aren't in PERS, so the final tier, and you are contributing to our 401k, what percentage do you, no you're not?
No. Tier 4, which is the final tier, are in PERS. Currently, nobody has a 401k. Every position is in PERS for full-time year-round. Not putting this position back into PERS would be the exclusion. Does that make sense?
Does that answer your question? I'll check with folks on the phone. Councilmember Cease, did you have any questions?
No, I don't, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Osenga, or I'm sorry, Councilmember Casagrande, do you have any questions?
I do. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around, it says the previous police chief was compensated 401k in lieu of PERS at a rate of 10% of the annual salary. If the council wishes to extend this offer in lieu of PERS, the annual cost would be $10,531, which I understand that's likely the 10% contribution of salary, plus the required past service cost of $19,535. I don't understand what that is.
Go ahead.
So, this is it always comes up. It's hard to explain, but with every position in PERS, there's a past service cost related to an unfunded liability based on years ago, the state of Alaska, with their actuaries and their auditors, they were trying to figure out how much the PERS retirement system as a whole cost. And there was a ginormous error. There was lawsuits involved, et cetera, so there's this huge chunk that is not funded by any city. It sits on every city's books as an unfunded liability, and that there's a percentage that we pay on every position, no matter what, if that position is filled or not. As long as it's in PERS, we're paying that off until the unfunded liability is paid off, which is projected to be like 2033-ish. So whether or not that position is in PERS or someone is in it, that $19,000 we are paying either way. So if you're going to go the 401k route, you're going to pay the $19,000 plus the 10%, which is 29%, but regular would be 22%.
Can I follow up?
Yep, go ahead. Do you have a follow-up?
I do. So it was my understanding that the chief was, the past chief was not in PERS, and he was not in PERS when this liability was placed on everybody. So this is not a PERS position. So once again, that $19,535 should not apply to this position. I understand the liability of PERS, and it was kind of like how the fishermen received their quota, right? Like whoever's caught X amount of fish, you're going to get that amount of quota at this point in time of where you're at. So once again, I don't know if I'm arguing or disagreeing with the $19,535,000 or 30, whatever, that number or not. And then my other follow-up question, just so I don't have to raise my hand anymore, would be, was this position advertised as the salary plus PERS? Or what was the retirement advertised for this position when it went out for advertisement?
So first of all, can you explain, at the beginning of this, they never took this position out of PERS and paid can you explain that part?
Yeah, there was a temporary waiver allowed by SB 242, I think, that allowed us to do this for PERS retired employees temporarily, which has since sunset. So now we have to make a decision either way.
So if we were going to take this position out of PERS, it would be, what would the ramifications be?
Termination study, and then whatever cost is incurred with completely taking it out of PERS.
So in the lieu of doing that, we would pay the $19,000 and change annually.
So with the termination cost is included in that $19,000 that you're going to pay until it's paid off, no matter what. Even if you take it out of PERS, you're still going to pay that unfunded liability.
Okay, thank you. And then can you answer the question how it was advertised? In that in either the job description or how that was advertised, did it specify PERS, non-PERS, did it say?
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, I don't remember how, I don't remember ever seeing any job say anything about PERS that I can think of. Sam?
I don't know if
Yeah.
it was or not, no.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Buckland.
I don't think the positions in the city are advertised with retirement or benefits that are on top of there. I looked at the website. I understand all the information, and I'm thankful for Sam for bringing more information to us. I don't feel qualified to understand even anything about PERS to vote on something like this. I will vote in favor. I do realize that there is liabilities in removing positions from PERS, and I hope that maybe we could get an agenda item to figure out some more education for us on PERS liabilities, PERS studies, and whatever, so that we know that we know how to make decisions on items like this. I personally don't know. So, unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to the one at the AML because we all split up, and I didn't go to I went to another one that I thought was important, and I think the mayor and
the same one.
yeah, and council member Cease went. So, I hope maybe the clerk or our attorneys or administration can find us some education on PERS liabilities.
Yep, sounds good. We're getting a thumbs up from administration. That it would be helpful. Councilmember Cease, did you have any questions or comments? I'm sorry, I can't remember if I asked you.
You asked me and I didn't have any, but like Tony said, I don't know much about PERS, so I guess I'm not really capable of answering yes or no on either one of them. Tell me no more.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready to call for a vote? Let's go ahead and call for a vote, please.
Voting on the approval of resolution 2021-013, Buckland,
Yes.
Posenga,
Yes.
Demas,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Casagranda,
Yes.
Cease,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Thanks. The next resolution that was postponed from the last meeting is resolution 2021-015. Madam Clerk?
Resolution 2021-015 is authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Electric Power Systems Incorporated to repair and upgrade the control system for generator 3 in the amount of $258,000 or $258,778 plus 10% contingency of $25,878 for a total not to exceed $284,656 in appropriating funds. This item was postponed from January 25th, 2021. The remaining motion is back on the floor.
Thank you. So we do not need a motion and a second, and that subsequent information starts on page 43. There was a question asked, and so since we do have the city attorney here, I wonder, you did check on potential conflict of interest. We can read it in our packet, but I don't know if you would just want to hit the highlights for us. Sorry.
Sure, there was a conflict of interest question that arose in connection with this particular contract. The conflict question involved whether or not the participation of one of the principals in EPS, which is the proposed contractor, his name is David Burlingame, and he owns a substantial chunk of the company. He's a minority owner, but it's still a substantial chunk of the company. He currently serves as the City of Seward's representative on a body that was mandated by the state legislature called the Rail Belt Reliability Council. It's a so far unofficial organization. It will at some point most likely be certificated by the Regulatory Commission of Alaska, because the state legislature mandated these types of councils be formed. And I think the concept is interconnected utilities be working together to improve the overall reliability of the intertie system for delivering electricity. So each of the utilities that are in the rail belt have a representative to this council. The council itself is supposed to be a completely independent body from the member utilities, and it has 13 people that are supposed to be on the board of directors. So there'd be 6 other people that are selected from various stakeholder groups or people that supposedly know a little bit something about the industry. So the critical point, and this is all just by way of background, so you know what is the context of this conflict coming up. So you have somebody, an individual that partly owns this company. He's agreed to be the city's representative on this Railbelt Reliability Council, but he's doing that as a volunteer. He does not get paid, so he is not a city employee. And so then I had to decide, well, does this qualify as being a city official? Because if they were a city official, then there might be some procedure that someone would have to go through in order to be able to get money from working on behalf of the city as well. So I looked at the charter list of who are city officials. I looked at the code, what is a city official, and it's not somebody like this. So because the concerns expressed in the charter about an official or employee doing business with a city don't really apply to a volunteer, there's no problem on a conflict of interest basis with awarding this contract to this particular company.
Great, thank you. And I think the administration outlined the crux of why this resolution and what's happening here. But I'll go to questions if folks needed more information based on that. Councilmember Cease, did you have any questions?
No, I don't, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Casagrande?
No questions, thank you.
Great, thank you. So let's call for a vote.
Voting on resolution 2021-015. Cease.
Yes.
Casagrande.
Yes.
Demas.
Yes.
Osega.
Yes.
Bachman.
Yes.
McClure.
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Thank you. Resolution 2021-017 was approved on the consent agenda, and we're on new business. Next is resolution 2021-018. Madam Clerk?
Resolution 2021-018 is authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Electric Power Systems to procure, configure, and install 2 new SCADA servers to replace existing servers at the Fort Raymond Power Plant, to include capacitor bank graphics which mimic the equipment at Fort Raymond, and a cabinet to house the servers in the amount of $53,479 and appropriating funds.
And I'm looking for a motion and a second.
I moved for the approval of resolution 2021-018.
I second.
And so I'll turn over to administration.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to have Rob speak to this.
Thank you, Norm. The servers that we're talking about and the associated SCADA software control really all the functions, basically, of the power plant. The generators also, the servers also allow our plant operators to run all 6 of our plant generators. Without the servers and the associated software, they would have to run the generators manually, which would be almost impossible for them to do. These servers are going on 12 years old, and the last software update was done in 2015. While they're still operational, just from a technical standpoint alone, they've lived their useful life, so it's time to change them out. It really comes back to, in changing them out, a service reliability thing. There's no need to wait for these to start having glitches before we do something about it. The new servers will be updated with the latest software packages. We'll have a SCADA engineer from Anchorage that will travel here to make the installation, and then he will also transfer all the historical data and files over to the new servers. Once done, we will run both servers in parallel until we're assured that they're working properly, and then we will take the other vote.
Great, thank you, good overview. Councilmember Casagrande, I believe you took this off the consent agenda, and so I'll turn to you first if you have any questions.
Yeah, I guess my main question was, this is the same contractor again, and it looks like it's around the same scope of work. I mean, I'm not a professional as far as what work is being done on our generators, but the resolution that we just passed had a 10% contingency of almost $26,000. I mean, maybe what could be better clarified, is this control part of the last resolution that we just passed, and can part of that 10% contingency be applied to half of this?
So can you clarify how the two different works, maybe the scope differ?
How about from the generator we just
Yeah,
we
so
just
the
got
one that we,
approved?
yep.
The generator was number 6. I'm sorry, number 3. In that, we were replacing the specific control panel for that generator. These are the servers that control almost all of our functions in the plant, including the operation of the 6 generators. So the first one was about fixing the one generator. This is about fixing the software for all of the plant.
Great, thank you. Did you have a follow-up question, Councilmember Casagrande?
Yeah, I guess I was just wondering, the 10% contingency, that can't be used towards this, since it is a control for that same generator?
Well, it's a separate project. There may be an opportunity, I guess, to look at rolling that over toward this project. I can just investigate it and come back and let you know.
Are there any other questions? Councilmember Cease, do
Thank
you have any other questions?
No, I don't.
Are there any questions in the, I'm just going to say I am going to vote for this. I'm very happy to see the electric department working on infrastructure, because I think, again, as I've said before, our community expects a high level of, response once we do have outages, and to have those generators functioning. And I also am glad that we're not rolling it into that contingency, I guess, because I do want projects to be clear and separate, so there's no question on what we want a contractor to be completing.
Thank you.
So I guess, Madam Clerk, we'll call for a vote, please.
Voting on the approval of resolution 2021-018. Cease.
Yes.
Bachlan.
Yes.
Casagrande.
Yes.
McClure.
Yes.
DeMoss.
Yes.
Osenga.
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
We are on to other new business items. Number 2, the mayor appoint 2 council members to the tabulation team for the city attorney evaluation. That's found on page 78. I know that Councilmember Osenga and I are doing the clerk tabulations. Oh, no.
No, not
Oh, excuse me, Vice Mayor McClellan and I, my birthday buddy. Sorry about that. So I'm looking for 2 council members to volunteer to do. Oh, Councilmember Osenga, are you volunteering for this one?
I'll go with you.
Oh, good. So, Councilmember McClure and Councilmember Osenga, is there anyone dying?
There's another opportunity coming up.
There's another opportunity coming up. So without objections, hearing no objections, we'll appoint Councilmember Osenga and Councilmember McClure to the tally team. And they are smiling at you underneath their masks, so you don't
Yes.
have to be. So, Madam Clerk, I know that you've sent out your forms, you've sent out your information, and then you'll just do the same with the city attorney, is that correct?
I will. I'll do
Yeah.
that tomorrow, probably.
Okay.
And
Do you guys have any questions? Go ahead.
it says on March 8th, so what is the March 8th date? Is that when it's,
Evaluation.
oh, maybe I missed it. Oh, no, it says to be held on March 8th.
Because that would be the night, because the city attorney comes the first meeting of the month, and so he'll be in attendance on March 8th.
So you, when you send out the forms, will you put a deadline for
I will.
submission for us?
I will provide all that information.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I was just going to ask, I haven't seen the one for, the clerk is out already?
Yeah.
Can you make sure to resend that and just with the deadline, because then we'll have to meet ahead of time.
I just asked her to do that, and she just did.
It's in there.
But you can do it again.
I can do it again.
And I know you sent out your portion of it today.
Okay, thank you.
Schedule a joint work session with the Planning and Zoning Commission, Port and Commerce Advisory Board, and Historic Preservation on page 80. That's our annual meeting with those folks. They'll bring, or you'll provide their priorities for us to review. March 8th is what the proposal is. P&Z at 5. Port and Commerce Advisory Board at 5:45 and HP at 6:15. So that gives us 45 minutes with each. I mean, today with our work sessions, we really ran tight. I know at different times they've done 30 minutes with these, but I think 45 minutes is a little safer.
It's 45 with P&Z and 30 for PACAP
Okay.
and HP.
Okay, so 45 for the first one and then 30 for the next two.
I think that's good.
Well, and that gives us 30 minutes and then a 15-minute break. That's what it is. Okay. Yep, that looks great.
So that starts at 5?
March 8th at 5. Are there any objections? We'll just go with that recommendation. Next on the agenda, page 82, is discuss the clearing of Second Lake for ice skating, and I believe that was submitted jointly by Councilmember DeMoss and Vice Mayor Baclan, so I'll let you guys leg wrestle for who speaks first. Who wants to jump out there? COVID conscious leg wrestling. Go ahead.
I was asked to co-sponsor this with Vice Mayor Baclan, and I was just interested in doing so because of the amount of outreach from the community, and I just got so many emails and so many people were so upset about it. So I just feel really strongly that we need to have something else in place for people to be doing another project before we, cease operation on maintaining something without any warning or any alternatives. So that's why I supported this.
Vice Mayor Baclan, did you have any follow-up?
Yeah, and I know that Councilmember DeMoss would love to see her nieces and her family out there. And this, when looking back at all of this, I just tried to learn how to use legislative history better, and found more backup documentation that this is in the Seward Park and Recreation Department 2016 Master Plan. And it says Second Lake to continue to use Second Lake for ice skating, encourage use by properly maintaining ice with a lightweight ice resurfacing device, add holiday lights around the border for improved visibility. And then there's a lot of backup information as well on here too. Saying that there was a lot of volunteers that were helping to keep the ice clean, ice cleared. They had solicited for volunteers. And then we had a meeting with administration on Friday to discuss this. And I feel the takeaway from that was that, we can work to get it cleared off as long as it's priority of there's things that need to be taken care of. Firstly, like the senior center sidewalk and that parking area, so that Parks and Rec maintain that, and other places, sidewalks and stuff that are cleared first, and then working through priorities then to get to it. But just helping the community to kind of maintain that. I really would like to see that open, and I think there's a lot of people who feel the same way. I don't think that through history there wasn't really, like I said, they had a lot of volunteers they'd asked for volunteers. A couple citizens have reached out to me already and said that they would be willing to volunteer. And I know that we have a more stringent volunteer process now, so maybe that would be helpful for liability as well. And talking with administration on what areas are covered by our liability, and talking with our with the mayor. She feels that we are a town that takes a little bit of risks. We have a bike park, we have a skate park, and I think our town is used to a little bit of risk and fun activities that are outside. So I would really like to see us maintain that for our community.
So I'll turn over to administration for comments.
So Madam Mayor, Tyler is here to give an update, if he has an update on the process.
Right.
Sure.
Hi Tyler, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, Council. So, we did a little bit more research, reached out to different colleagues and agencies around the state to get a better idea of what conditions and the resources they provide snow clearing and ice grooming services under. So, some of the information we found out for Anchorage, Soldotna, Wasilla, they do offer grooming on natural ice lake bodies. Their minimum thickness is 12 inches for each of those municipalities. The caveat there is that the equipment they use is a truck with a snowplow. So the ice thickness obviously has to be thicker to support that greater weight load. They reference the Army Corps of Engineer measurement guidelines for cold weather research as sort of the baseline for some of the measurements they're pulling. They all use full-time staffing to conduct that maintenance. Homer, some other municipalities don't offer the grooming, have been asked to buy their respective communities. Homer doesn't actually have any city-owned lake body which to do it on, but there's a neighboring state lake that they've been asked to do it on that they declined to do for liability reasons, and that's also very common. Other land management agencies where they just generally decline across the board offering any sort of snow clearing services. But to that end, that we know how popular this service is here with the community. After the recent cold freeze, we completed 4 measurements on the lake in 4 different locations. This was as of last Friday. 3 locations showed a minimum thickness of 12 inches. One measurement was approximately 10 feet from the shore, where they broke through the water at around 8 inches. The overall depth of the lake appears to be around 3 feet. Had a great productive conversation with Jamie Lyons. He's a former park maintenance worker, really took the reins on this project in 2018, greatly expanded the ice rink, helped pioneer the use of our Ice Dragon lake grooming device. He was kind enough to fill me in on some of the background info, some of the labor required, and a lot of logistical constraints required around maintaining the lake. Some of the policies, just to reiterate, I think we touched on it a little bit last time, and I'll turn it back over to you guys.
Yeah, this is really helpful. Thank you.
So some of the suggestions from other guidelines, commonly used guidelines in other cities, our city attorney, AMLJA, that we develop a policy where we measure the ice thickness on a regular basis, likely 2 to 3 times a week at 3 or more specific locations to show a minimum ice thickness of 7 to 8 inches. There's a bunch of different ice charts, but somewhere in that 4 to 8 inches range seems to be a very commonly accepted range for ice thickness, at least for personnel workers on foot with light machinery or equipment. This policy should include a requirement, like I said, check 2 to 3 times a week, also potentially key to air temperature. If the air temperature raises above a certain threshold, or if it drops precipitously within a certain time frame, the ice can become brittle. Potentially post additional signage. We currently have warning signage up there that ice is danger than ice. Yeah, I believe it would would leave some burden up there regardless. And same as up in Anchorage, they never say, we would never say this either, that the ice is safe for skating or any other activity. We would make the determination that's safe for workers to perform maintenance, but that ice is never 100% safe because we can't guarantee that. We have to try and follow this policy as consistently as possible without fail. Additional suggestions could be additional lighting if we were allowed to allow this during darker hours. Some places prohibit any time of nighttime recreational skating or other activities. Consider using temporary fencing, potentially additional signage, including rules of conduct, open, closed for skating, hours of operation. Temporary fencing. Some notes about this lake in particular. We took pictures the week before the cold snap, and we know this about the lake too, just because we've worked on it for a while. So there's an inlet stream right near the main access point on the west side of the trail. So it's a warmer stream. It typically cuts right into the middle of the lake. So obviously the ice is much thinner next to that water tributary. We also have signage posted on the north and south end of the lake. The south end of the lake is much less accessible because you have to go through a bunch of brush and vegetation. But it's definitely a very clear, thin area on that side of the lake. The north end of the lake, there's a good 15, 20-foot gap on the trail where the trail cuts right across the bank of the water, where you could essentially just step out onto the water. And especially with snow cover, you might not even know, or people who aren't familiar with colder areas might not even know you're stepping out onto a lake. So we put one sign out there. So those are just some of the considerations and sort of additional background research help us develop a policy if it's the city's intention to continue providing the service.
Great, thank you. Councilman Rossi?
So what I'm getting is we need to develop a policy before we decide to start working on this. I mean, because what I'm getting from people is they want to ice skate. Now I've ice skated and I've got a shovel, so if I want to go out and clear snow, then I've got a shovel and skates and I can do that. But what I'm getting from you is, are we going to have to set a policy before we go up there and say we're going to manage this?
Well, I would highly recommend, based on what practices are in place in other places, we need a policy at least for our workers, for our department. I think we have some pretty solid, relatively solid guidelines that we could work with based on our research. Yes. So I would definitely recommend that we have.
Right.
I don't think this is an area where we want.
And then the only other thing is, do we have the manpower to do what is suggested that we need to do?
So working on the ice is minimum two-person, two-worker activity for the obvious safety reasons. We do a lot of the time. There have been moments, even since I've been here in my relatively short tenure, where we have one full-time park maintenance supervisor and the rest of our park maintenance workforce is seasonal. And that seasonal workforce during the wintertime can fluctuate typically between 1 to 3 seasonal workers. Pretty recently, we'll be down to 1 seasonal park maintenance worker here in a short period of time. There were times in the past season where we were literally down to just the supervisor. Challenges, recruiting, maintaining seasonal workers. We're always working on that. We're always looking to strive to improve that. It's hard for me to guarantee that there will be that consistency, though, that we'll always be able to have that minimum too. And even if we have just those 2 workers, I think there was a question of if we have these other work tasks that also feature sort of like health safety sort of issues like clearing parking lots and sidewalks. I think that's what we kind of talked about with priorities, and I think that was one of my primary concerns when this issue kind of came up, and the lack of more clear protocols and conditions in place.
Did Did you have a follow-up, Councilmember Osenga?
No, I'm good, thank you.
I'll go to the phones. Councilmember Cease, did you have any questions or comments?
The only thing is, I really like to have the idea of having an ice skating place in Seward. But you know, for the Seward weather, that is so different that if it doesn't stay cold, I wouldn't want the responsibility of having somebody fall through and the city gets sued. I don't know how to handle it. I do wish they had some place to skate, but I'd hate to see anybody get hurt up there, even if it's only a 3-foot deep lake.
Thank you. Councilmember Casagrande, do you have any questions or comments?
I want to do whatever it takes to make it possible for Second Lake to be open to skating.
Thank you. I guess I would agree with that, and the reason why is this isn't a new lake that we're just debating whether we should start doing this. I mean, it's a practice that I think our citizens have come to expect. If you need to develop protocols and procedures, do it. And then I mean, this is the perfect winter for it. We're COVID, we're trying to encourage people to be outside, be healthy, we're starting to get more sun, people need vitamin D. We have a cold spell, you know, so the conditions are right. I mean, clearly, if it's raining and the ice isn't available to use, we don't have an ice rink. But if possible, it would be great to, at least this year of all years, when we're not able to gather inside, which I know you've done a great job having outside movies, having those sports outside. I feel like this kind of dovetails into steps that you've already taken that are really doing amazing things for the community. So, you know, I don't know if we need a vote. Would that help administration? Just something for the record, or?
I understand you guys want it open, but we have to maintain, you know, the safety of the employees. We also want to do the safety of the public.
Yes.
So I know that they're actually short a piece of equipment right now. We're going to be borrowing a snowblower from the harbor here so they can kind of get that up there. I'm not sure on their time frame. I know they're working on it. They're going to, you know, get their list. I know they cleaned the sidewalks around here and all that, but right now everything's clear. So I think they're trying to get up there. And I think they reached out today, I think, and got that squared away with the snowblower. You can give me a time frame if you can get that clear, or?
Did you have a comment?
Yes, I wanted to recommend that the council, even if it's just by motion, actually take official action directing administration to make the lake available.
Well, so here's
the reason for that is because it creates it gets this categorized under an immunity statute for what's called a discretionary decision. So if it's the council telling the management to do it, the council is making this decision, as opposed to the administration deciding to do it on their own.
So here's the problem, though, just for some background. It's never been an issue until it showed up in a city manager's report saying they were no longer going to do it. So it has been done traditionally. It's actually in, I don't know if you were able to review the plan, but it's actually in the Parks and Rec master plan that's something that they'll do.
Oh, and that was approved by the council, I'm sure.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I mean, that's that in 2016. That's part of. I mean, I'm fine to make a motion. I don't have a problem with it, but I just wanted on the record that this is something new that has been done previously. I mean, it's not something new. It's something that has been continuing.
Right, you would have to vote to amend the plan to take it out.
Well, I would think.
Yeah, okay.
Councilmember Osenga?
No, I'm good, thank you.
But I'm happy to make a motion. I mean, if you want direction, I mean, I'll make a motion that we continue to provide the historic service of an ice rink on Second Lake Park as outlined in the Parks and Rec master plan.
I second it.
Is there any discussion to the motion? Thank you. I don't think we're ready to call for a vote.
Voting on that motion, DeMoss,
Yes.
Buckhorn,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Casagrande,
Yes.
Cease,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That motion is approved.
And I think clearly, again, it goes without saying that there's there's times when it won't be available, just like there's trails that are not available in Seward or playgrounds that are not available, and then that is up to administration's judgment on the safety and the conditions. Next on the agenda is other new business items. Number 6, discuss the possibility of outsourcing human resources, page 87 of our packet. And that's Council Member Buckwan, Vice Mayor Buckwan.
Thank you, Marjorie. So I brought this forward because a long time ago, when I was part of just watching what was happening before being on the dais, there was direction that was given to the former city manager to look into outsourcing human resources. And thanks to administration for providing the laydown.
That's the implication.
Or was
PERS?
it in here? No. The email that was here.
Yeah, the study
Yeah.
based on.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. And so the study was here. This was the PERS implications that were sent from the regional senior benefits counselor. And then there was an email, and I guess this is from finance to the city manager, talking about the PERS position, but also there was no costs at all that came back from, possibly outsourcing human resources. I think some people might get caught up in the spirit of what actually I was intending to do. Mid-cycle budget is coming up. We have opportunities to look at our budget and figure out where money is going to come from, where we can get the things accomplished that we want to get done in this year. I have a couple other things that I'm working on as well that I'm looking through, and really trying to figure out how we can get the best out of our budget. It's not, none of cutting and budget making and budget practices is easy of what we want to see and what people and departments have to deal with. It's always a hard decision when we look at the items and going through the budget process and going line by line, and we're thinking of what the drops in the bucket are, and when I looked at that before and we were going through budget, people are like, oh, those are drops in the bucket. But all of those drops accumulate to hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. And then when we want to see something like Second Lake cleared, and we say, well, we don't have people to do it, or we don't have the hours or people to do it, then these are the projects that we want to see done. So there's always going to be a sacrifice. It's never going to be easy, and it's never going to be, an easy decision to make. So I think from the reason why I had had brought this forward was it was direction that was brought historically from before, from councils before, to bring this information up. Going back now and kind of really looking at the position and what it entails, what services are our employees receiving from there, and I guess that was another part of it too, right, was trying to get to understand what human resources is doing before we had risk management under that position. Looking at other municipalities, when we are basing pay against other municipalities, some human resources people were grant writers and human resources, or executive liaison and human resources. They were multifunctional jobs. So looking at what we are, really getting to in that position, I think it was another part of me bringing this up to see what were the functions really right now as human resources, and what the department is doing, and if we could outsource those things to get a better quality of human resource department for our employees. Innovation in human resources is important because it keeps us on the cutting edge of providing the best services for our employees. It also gives us a really good look on what are our problems as a city. Why are we facing high turnaround always? We're always looking at people leaving and coming and going and leaving the city. Where are our problems? It also takes bias and nepotism and all of those things out of the equation if we can focus on what the code and our policies and procedures are and deal with those things head on and without any interruption. We're a really small town, you know, and we see each other, you know, we're all friends, or we are closely knit together, and that position and that person in human resources really should be an advocate for the employees, and innovative and bringing things that is going to make the city resilient and have long-term employees where we have more people who are at 10 and 15 years and we can reward them more, you know. So I know that maybe the intent was lost in some of this, but there also is some positives that can be found in it as well. But thanks for letting me bring it out.
Councilmember Osenga?
So I'm going to just go ahead and say that I'm nowhere near in favor of going anywhere near this for two reasons mainly. One is I don't think that you're going to find that outsourcing an HR department, an HR employee, is going to save you that much money compared to what you're paying now for your employee. And also having the added benefit of an employee that's in our city, in our administration, I think is just a much better fit as far as handling and dealing with HR issues in a timely manner and not having to rely on somebody who's not here. The other thing is I really don't know that we should even be dealing with this kind of issue right now. I could see it if this position was empty and there was nobody in it. And I will also state that I kind of, I was a little bit surprised to hear bias, nepotism, and favoritism from this position. I'm not sure that that was worthy to be brought up in this meeting. I have not heard of anything going on, and I'm unaware of anything going on, and I don't even want to think that anything's going on. But we're getting dangerously close into dealing with personnel issues that we really shouldn't be dealing with as a council. So those are my two reasons.
And I know, maybe, do you want to talk about the PERS ramifications? And maybe even more so, I think you were looking at maybe, did you ever find out what a cost would be?
So, Madam Mayor, I have not got a response back. I actually asked GovHR, and they were looking. So there's no municipalities in the state that has outsourced HR. From what I understand, the state has tried it before, and they failed on 3 attempts from talking with the union rep. And so PERS would be $285,000 roughly. So what I found out about PERS, like that thing here kind of helps out. So it's the starting wage. When the PERS goes in, that's where they determine the what the penalty is. So that's where that comes from, which I just found out about. So and our current HR employee is making $65,000 a year, and I know that there was a question brought up about we hired an acting finance director through a contract, and also electric, and so Corey was getting $62.50 an hour, and Jen is currently $150 an hour. So contracting out is going to, going to be a lot, I think. But as soon as I get that thing back from GovHR, I'll send it out through the clerk to you guys to look at, and then we can go from there.
So this is a little tangential, so hopefully it's not too far off the mark. So we have our 2020 sales tax.
Yeah.
It sounds like this was brought forward in anticipation of our mid-session budget cycle. So that's gonna come to us, I know you were saying the first meeting in March, I'm not sure how much.
22nd of March?
22nd of March, because I think we're gonna have to start making some hard decisions and looking at the cuts. So depending on what you learn, which I agree, I think having employees live in Seward is important. I was always against when the finance department had an employee that lived on the East Coast. That was always a problem that I brought up because we do want people to, which a contractor could live in be a small business in Seward, but we do want it to be contributing to our local economy. So I appreciate you bringing forward an idea because hopefully administration is going to have to come up with some ideas to meet some of our budget shortfalls. So that's a long way around. Just to say, I think there might be some bad ideas, might be some good ideas, but I still think as a council we need to talk about them all and look at them objectively. So I know you're doing more research potentially. March 22nd, we're going to be talking about our mid-session budget cycle. Councilmember Cease, did you have any comments on this item?
Well, I guess I missed something. Tony was talking about outsourcing HR, and you brought up sales tax. What does sales tax have to do with the HR?
No, I was talking, one of the things that Vice Mayor Baclon talked about was bringing this forward, knowing that we have to look at some creative options for our city budget moving forward. So that was my comment pertaining to that.
Okay. I must have turned my head because I didn't understand that. Thank you very much. Other than that, no questions.
Thank you. Sorry to confuse things. Councilmember Casagrande, did you have any comments or questions?
I'd just like to echo everything that you said, Mayor Terry, as far as, looking at all of these ideas objectively. One of the things that we have a number thrown out of $280-something thousand of what it would cost to cancel the position, but can we, I guess one of the questions, if we end up directing administration to compile information on outsourcing human resources, one of the things that I'd like to know, or if somebody has an answer here tonight, is do you have to pay the $280,000 and get rid of the position, or can you contract it for the short term because of our budget shortfall? So can we say, we're going to keep on paying the PERS of X amount, $16,000 a year or $10,000 a year for the next 2 years, but we're going to, for the short term, contract it out. Is that an option? So when administration does look further into outsourcing human resources, I'd like to have answers to that question, please.
Do you know the answer to that?
To me,
Does Sam have?
well, to me, I just have a problem with laying off an employee to hire a contract employee, and then when we get healthy again, money-wise, then we stop the contract and hire an employee back. That's where I'm at. That to me doesn't. Attorney can touch on it if you like, or.
I've worked on issues that had to do when a position is vacant, a PERS position is vacant, and we've been able to negotiate, temporary hires without, having to pay this penalty and stuff that were not part of PERS on a contract basis, but it was always on the idea that the municipality was actively looking for employees to fill the position, but they just hadn't been able to find one yet. So that's the only context that I've been able to successfully help people avoid this penalty, because you have a non-PERS person in the position on a contract basis. But it requires actually looking for somebody to fill the position. So I'm not sure it would work to temporarily, to say that you were gonna go to a contract position temporarily.
Great, thank you. Is there any further comments?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Councilmember Casagrande.
So I guess if we're, I know we're on a discussion item about outsourcing human resources, but Mayor Jerry, you have touched that, mid-cycle budget is coming up. So maybe one of the things that we look at is a hiring freeze and, looking more to outsourcing positions in the next 2 years with a hiring freeze. So anyways, that's just another thing to look at. And if we could get, further answers on what it would look like I know the attorney just mentioned that he's never looked at doing that with a position that's filled, so he's been with a position that's open, but is it possible to do it with a position that's filled?
Thank you. And I might say, our ideas, I'm hoping administration comes with even better ideas so that we're not, as a council, trying to search for ways that you have good recommendations. Councilmember DeMoss?
Just a couple things. I wanted to thank Vice Mayor Bucklaw for bringing this up, because I know that it takes courage to bring up something that can kind of be a controversial subject, and I know that you're not pointing anyone in particular out, and this truly is a discussion about this position and has been for a long time. I also think it's inevitable that in a small town there is nepotism, and it just happens, and that's just a fact. So I think that the people that have shown their support for outsourcing HR have experienced that, and that's why they are interested in it. That's what I've come to find out, at least from my constituents. That's all.
Councilmember Buckland?
I just do want to point out, you mentioned Corey. First of all, you mentioned the position currently makes $65,000. And is that before or after the wage study?
That's after the wage study.
It's $65,000.
I believe so, correct? Yes.
Okay. And then you also mentioned Corey, and the cost of...
The reason I mentioned Corey, if you don't mind, the reason I mentioned Corey, because we had discussed before about, we had contracted out other positions, but there was nobody in that position, is why they did that hiring. We currently have somebody in HR. That's why I brought up Corey, how much it costs to contract somebody out.
Sure. But with Corey, we also did benefit a lot from having him here.
Correct.
We had moved forward with the interconnect policy. We had gotten way more efficiency outside of that department than we've seen in a long time. His presence at PACAB was amazing, and the things that he brought forward, and the way that he had moved us forward from really a stagnant area to really getting in progressive things. Now we have almost 4 people hooked up on an interconnect policy, which took years and meetings and so many meetings, So we did benefit from Corey and from his expertise. And I don't know, some may argue that cost was valid for where he brought us to this point.
I just, Madam Mayor, to touch on that, so I have not heard of any complaints about HR not doing their job, or from the union reps or anybody. So if there's some complaints out there that we don't know about, please let me know, and we can address them. But if there's...
I would say right now it is not about complaints.
Okay.
It is just historically, from even when the last budget was talked about and proposed budget that came up, it was already discussed and given direction. That's why the emails exist of Scott researching, which really, I mean, doing some looking into of outsourcing that position. So like I said, there was no cost on how, the RFP, or looking out to see how much would it cost to do this, right? That's free. It's not going to cost us but our time, right? To say, let's look at this. But I guess I just wanted to bring it up and say, we're looking at making hard decisions too. And I think I echo the sentiments of the mayor that we are going to need to get creative, because I don't want to lose people from Seward. I don't want to see any of the employees leave either. So really, what are we going to do to get our budget in line with the sales tax that we're gonna bring in this year and how we're gonna make it through the end of the year. And if that's cutting into the reserves to keep the employees here, to keep the employees so that we're not cutting hours, I'm in favor of that. So I want to see the employees taken care of as well, but at the same time, there's gonna need to be some, not, like you said, not everyone's gonna be happy.
Well, as soon as I get that quote from, was it quote, just a rough estimate of what it would cost, I will definitely get it before you so you can see. This didn't come in today. I called up and there was still nothing there. Sorry.
Councilmember Rosenga?
I would just say that I believe there is a cost other than just money. I believe that just us discussing this is not good for the morale and the employees of this administration. I think that, I don't know. Yes, we do have a problem with our budget coming up. We are going to have to look at things to cut. But again, I just think this is not the right place to start.
Any other comments? Next on the agenda is informational items and reports. 2020 write-offs for Harbor, Seward, Marine Industrial Center, and electric utilities is included in our packet on page 88. If there's no questions, next is citizen comments. Madam Clerk, do we have folks on the line for citizen comments?
I have no citizen comments.
Great. Next on the agenda is council and administration comments in response to citizen comments, and I'll start off with administration.
So I'd like to emphasize again about moving your cars on 3rd Avenue. I know you're all going to say it too. We just, don't want you to get your vehicle towed or anything, but that way there they can clear it, because everybody's been going down 3rd Avenue, see how narrow it's been getting. Kind of only one car going by or one truck if you drive a big truck. So yeah, please, if your car's there, move it. And thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'll start with folks on the phone. Councilmember Cease, do you have any comments?
Well, I really don't have much of a thing to say, except that I appreciate Brooks being here to do fine with us. And I also am pleased with almost all of our agenda tonight. Have a nice weekend, everybody.
Thank you. Councilmember Casagrande, do you have any comments?
No comment, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Demas.
I want to say thank you for everyone that contributed to the city tour for me this last week. It was really fun, and I learned a lot. Doug's amazing. He did the whole thing all day. He must have been exhausted. And we have a lot of really wonderful people that work for the city that really, really care. So it was just a really good opportunity to meet a lot of people that I hadn't even met yet after living here this long. And just kind of hearing face to face how they felt about their positions and what they thought their departments needed. So I really appreciated that. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Tyler for doing all the research on the ice rink and everything. And I know he's been taking a lot of, complaints and stuff about that. So I just really appreciate him being on board with looking into solutions to get that going again. So that's all. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Rosenga.
Just thanks to everybody for their awesome reports. Be safe out there, be nice, and just remember to take care of yourselves. Oh yeah, move your cars off.
Good job. Councilmember McClure.
I want to first of all echo what Councilmember Demas said. I was on the city tour and I'd gone on it 2 years ago, I guess, also, but members of the community were on that one. It was really, really neat. It's the first time I've been downstairs through the jail sort of areas, and the whole thing was really good. So I recommend that to those that weren't here to be able to do that, because you can learn stuff. The mayor was with us, and I think she learns a few things too. So thank you, Brooks, for the good report. I like the attorney report format you have, because it shows us where the money is going. And I was really excited about the interconnection report that we're actually finally getting, so we can be in the world of renewable energy if individuals choose, and that's a really good thing. And yes, be moving your car on Third Avenue because they be coming about 3 or 4 in the morning, this coming up morning. So to clear the Third Avenue because everybody's been complaining that they need to. So now you got to get the stuff out of the way. So that's all I have.
Vice Mayor.
I'd like to say thank you to Jim Pemberton, who is going to volunteer his time on historic preservation. Being a part of a board or commission is very thankless job sometimes, but it's also somebody's got to do it. So thanks for him for stepping up. There are vacancies on planning and zoning, so I encourage anybody who's interested in planning and zoning just put in an application, and the deadline for your application is
Right now, February 12th.
February 12th for your deadline for your application. I'd like to thank administration for all the hard work that they've done to put together the meeting and reaching out to us and being very responsive to our questions. I know that it's not easy to make some decisions sometimes, but going through mid-cycle budget, I think we're going to have to face the music and really take a look at what we are going to do this year. I hope that administration and the council can work together on creative ways to figure out how we can move forward in a responsible manner.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Hot off the press today, just so the public knows what we're looking at and facing, we have a drop in sales tax from last year. So our, what we were looking at as our drop is $1,883,343.04. So that's the shortfall that we're going to be meeting this year. I know there's potentially additional funds coming out of the federal government. We'll see if those come through. But so we're going to be taking a hard look on that March 22nd. Sounds like administration will be working on that. And I know that they've already talked to department heads about cutting travel since we're not traveling anyways, and looking to department heads to get some information back. I want to echo the thanks to Doug with Public Works and all the department heads for taking time with the three of us for the council tour. That was a whole day and I was exhausted at the end of it, but lots of good stuff. I want to bring up something from the chamber. It was in Jason's report, but this weekend it's very important. It's the $35,000 that we provided to them. They're parlaying that into generate $100,000 locally. So here's the opportunities for all the businesses that are chamber members. Go to the website, scroll down, sign up to be registered for the program. There's 24 businesses already registered, and also nonprofits that are chamber members can register. So folks, this weekend, everyone needs to go online, check out the chamber website. If you spend $200 this weekend, the chamber will remit back to you $100 in gift cards in $25 increments. So then you not only spend at local businesses, but then you have a gift card to spend at local businesses. Or you can choose to have that gift card be for a nonprofit that is registered for the program. So that's really making your dollars and that relief fund dollars go reverberate even more in the community. So check out the chamber website, scroll down until you find it. I wanted to say great job on the hazard mitigation plan. That link was in our packet, and that's, we work with the borough, or our emergency folks work with the borough closely on that. Stay healthy. There's a lot of additional light. Get out, be with people in a responsible manner. And I just want to say there's, with Parks and Rec, there's sponsor grandparent, there's equipment rentals to play outside, there's youth leadership council, there's outdoor sports, adults on Thursday, family Fridays. There's a carpool movie night this Friday, and it's Frozen, so you have, or Frozen 2. So you have to go and register, and it's just $5 a car. There's parking lot bingo. So there's lots of exciting things. Our Seward Parks and Recreation have rebranded. So check that out on the city website. And thanks everyone for their time. Have a good night.